The greatest spies in history are the ones we've never even heard about, until today, because we're about to expose every one of them. Subscribe now because you won't regret what's coming next. Anthony Blunt was the aristocrat who betrayed everyone around him. Anthony Blunt seems like he was destined for greatness. The guy graduated from Cambridge and was a distant relative of the British royal family. He was also a world-renowned art historian and the perfect embodiment of the British establishment. What made him even crazier is that he was fluent in multiple languages and recognized as a brilliant polymath. Needless to say, he was untouchable, and everyone knew it. When you go beneath that aristocratic exterior, there is a secret that rocked everyone to their core, because no one was expecting it. Blunt operated double lives, one as a British guy and the other as a Soviet spy, being a member of the infamous Cambridge Five. His position in MI5 and later within the royal court itself gave him access to some of the most top-secret information during the most critical moments of World War II. It took around 34 years before Blunt's betrayal was finally exposed by the Prime Minister Mars. As shocking as the revelation was, new evidence even suggests something even darker. He may have also been involved with the Nazis, giving them state secrets that were to be protected. This prolonged the war and cost thousands of Allied lives. Can you imagine just a single man was responsible for so many lives being lost, and also the war getting prolonged, which was originally supposed to be shorter? Calling Anthony Blunt the most dangerous spy might not seem like a good idea, but when you consider the information he had access to and the power and influence that he had, you might just give him that spot. Kim Philby wasn't another spy who betrayed everyone. He was a special one right from the get-go. Being one of the most trusted intelligence officers in Britain, he was quite reliable, and everyone loved him. However, he was also working for the Soviet Union for nearly 3 decades. Born Harold Adrian Russell Philby in 1912, he came from a privileged background and attended Cambridge University, where he was recruited by Soviet intelligence in 1934. During the time when many young British intellectuals were drawn to communism as a response to the rise of fascism in Europe, the Soviets identified him as the perfect long-term opportunity to terrorize Britain and start the World War. He joined Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, in 1940 and then quickly rose through the ranks. By just 4 years, he was already running the Soviet desk, which meant he was literally in charge of British operations against the USSR while feeding everything back to Moscow. The irony here was quite absurd, and the man who was responsible for catching Soviet spies was himself the most valuable Soviet spy in Britain. Philby's betrayal cost lives. He tipped off the Soviets about the planned operation, leading to the capture and execution of British and American agents who were sent behind the Iron Curtain. In 1949, when the US and UK sent Albanian exiles into Albania to start the anti-communist uprising, Philby had already informed Moscow about that. From there, the paramilitaries were ambushed and slaughtered. Dozens of men died because he sent a telegram. Perhaps one of his most infamous acts would be warning the fellow Soviet spies Guy Burgess and Donald Maclean in 1951 that British intelligence was closing in on them. Both of them fled to Moscow just in time, and this raised suspicion about Philby, but his charm, connections, and rank allowed him to deflect those accusations for years as well. In 1955, he publicly cleared his name from the government, and he even held a press conference denying that he was a spy, boldly lying to the British press and public. He continued working for MI6 in Beirut until 1963, when mounting evidence became undeniable. Tipped off once again, Philby went to Moscow before he could even be arrested. He spent the rest of his life in the Soviet Union, decorated as a hero by the KGB. He died in Moscow in 1988, having never expressed any concerns or shown that he did anything wrong. I'm doing a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway to celebrate when this channel reaches 1,000 subscribers. No action is required to enter. I'll randomly pick a winner once we hit the milestone. If you want to follow the journey or see the winner announcement, feel free to subscribe. Next up is George Blake, the spy who gave away everything. He was born George Behar in Rotterdam in 1922 to a Dutch mother and an Egyptian Jewish father. During World War II, he joined the Dutch resistance force and later escaped to Britain. There, he was recruited by British intelligence, so he changed his name to Blake, which was the name of a British citizen. However, Blake was captured by North Korean forces during the Korean War in 1950 and was also held prisoner of war for over 3 years. It was during his captivity that he claimed to have become disillusioned with Western imperialism and decided to work for the Soviet Union, which seemed like the best plan for him. Some historians even believe that he was actually recruited earlier, but Blake always maintained that the Korean War prison camp was the one that changed him entirely. After his release in 1953, he returned to Britain and continued his career in MI6, much like many other agents who betrayed Britain at that time. His position gave him access to extremely sensitive intelligence, and he handed over almost everything he could to the KGB. His most devastating betrayal was revealing the Berlin Tunnel operation, which was a joint CIA-MI6 project where Western intelligence tapped into Soviet military communication lines in East Berlin. The operation had been gathering valuable intelligence for nearly a year when Blake told his KGB handlers about it. The Soviets let it continue for a while to protect Blake's cover, and discovered it in 1956, shutting it down and turning it into a victory. However, Blake's betrayal went even further, as he gave away names. British intelligence later estimated that he exposed over 400 Western agents to the Soviets, many of whom were then executed. He was finally arrested in 1961 after a Polish defector provided information that led to his arrest. After the trial, he was sentenced to 42 years in prison, which was a huge sentence that reflected the severity of his crime. Blake's story didn't end there. In 1966, he pulled off one of the most daring prison escapes in British history. He went away from Wormwood Scrubs prison in London by scaling the wall with a rope ladder. He even hid in a safe house before being smuggled across Europe in the trunk of a car. He lived the rest of his life in Russia, receiving a KGB pension and living comfortably. This guy lived to be 98, but never faced full justice for the crimes he committed. This is just the start, because the next agents will make you shake in fear. Subscribe now if you're enjoying the video so far. John Vassall was the blackmailed spy, and his story is quite an interesting one. John's story is different from Philby's and Blake's because he wasn't motivated by the ideology of communism or money initially. At first, he was trapped through blackmail and forced methods. He was born in 1924, and he was a homosexual man living in an era where homosexuality was illegal in Britain and even carried a severe criminal fate. In 1954, he started working as a clerk at the British Embassy in Moscow. The KGB identified this man as vulnerable and set a trap. They invited him to a party, got him drunk, and arranged for him to be photographed in compromising positions with other men. After he woke up, the officers showed him photographs and made it clear that if he cooperated, then it would be nice. Otherwise, these photos would be sent to British authorities and his family. Terrified of his insecurity, exposure, and imprisonment, Vassall agreed. He began passing information to the Soviet handlers. When he returned to London in 1956, he continued spying, and now he was working in the Admiralty, where he had access to high-class naval intelligence. For 6 years, he photographed thousands of documents and handed them to the Soviets, even used the camera hidden in his briefcase, and developed the film at home. The intelligence was all about British naval capabilities, weapon systems, and strategic plans. Vassall was finally called in 1962, after one of the KGB officers provided leads that pointed toward a spy in the Admiralty. Investigators searched his apartment, they found his camera equipment and undeveloped film. He confessed immediately. After that, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison, and his case created a scandal not because of the espionage, but because it raised questions about security. He served 10 years after being released in 1972, and he lived quietly after his release. He even wrote an autobiography in which he expressed some remorse, but also blamed the system that had made him vulnerable in the first place. Melita Norwood's story might shock you because she was known as the Granny Spy. Sounds straight out of the fiction, right? It looks just like that. This lady spied for the Soviet Union for over 40 years without being caught, and she was finally exposed in 1999, when she was already an 87-year-old grandmother living quietly in suburban London. Born as Melita Cernis in 1912 to a Latvian father and British mother, Norwood was recruited by the NKVD, which is the predecessor to the KGB. In other words, she was even before the KGB was formed in 1937. She was also working as a secretary. Melita was motivated by the communist ideology, and she genuinely believed in the Soviet cause and wanted to help the USSR achieve military dominance in the West. During World War II and throughout the Cold War, she worked for the British Non-Ferrous Metal Research Association, which sounds quite boring, but it was actually involved in atomic research and was a part of Britain's weapons system. Her position gave her access to the classified documents about Britain's atomic bomb project. She then started smuggling documents out of the office, photographing them and passing them to the Soviet handler. The intelligence she provided helped the Soviet Union develop its own atomic bomb, years after it would have developed it itself. Some historians argue that she was also one of the most important Soviet spies of the 20th century because of the value of the nuclear secrets that she provided. The way she survived for so long was because she was so invincible. Melita was a secretary, a woman, a mother, and later a grandmother. No one suspected that the pleasant lady who baked cakes for the neighbors and even sat in her garden was passing nuclear secrets to Moscow. So which spy case surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for more.